It's awesome seeing so many people joining live for this.
Yeah.
And I guess without further ado, I'm going to let Zach take it away. So get started with the presentation.
Awesome. Well, really excited to showcase the work of Tomas and Francisco here. They've been part of the Water Stories community from day one. They've also brought a lot of people into the Water Stories community. So appreciative and grateful for the work you guys are doing on the ground and in the communities there to help spread this really hopeful vision and strategy for the future of our planet. And so they've been doing a lot of wonderful work over the past couple of years. Throughout Chile, Regeneration Agua Tierra. I'm putting this in the chat for everyone to check out their website and also their Instagram account. If you want to get in touch with them, reach out to them via either of those. And it's really been awesome to see just all the work that you guys are doing, the way that it's evolved and developed over time, and the way that you guys have evolved and developed your offerings and your engagements with the community. So just so inspired by the two of you guys creating really a movement of your own in your own region. And without further ado, we'll let you guys, or I guess a couple of housekeeping. We'll have the presentation first. If you have questions during the presentation, put them in the question and answer. And then what we'll do is at the end, we'll open it up for people to ask questions by raising their hand, and we'll go through all those questions that came in throughout the presentation. So without further ado, take it away, guys.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thanks, Zach and Bradley, for creating this space, and everyone for taking your time to be part of this conversation. We're so happy to be here. We're so grateful for all that we've learned, and we want to share a little bit of our story here. So the presentation is in Spanglish. There's a lot of the text in Spanish and some of them in English. And at the end, if there are some Spanish-speaking questions, there's no problem with that as well. We're trying also to create this bridge between this. So we want to tell you about a story about Agua Tierra, Centro de Estudios Agua Tierra, Water and Earth Study Center. So it's all about regenerative design, nature, and culture, all the same. Next slide, please. So what we aim for is to reconnect or create again the bond with nature processes, so we can connect and promote our inherent capacity to restore the landscape and the environment. So we need to create those connections to maximize our potential. And the picture you're seeing over there is from a project we're going to talk later, where I'm living, basically. Next slide, please. This is going to be a presentation of what who we are, what we do on some of our projects, and in the end, we can chat more the details of them. So this is one of the many iterations of this group of people working for this, and we've decided that these 4 values should be the one that sustain us. So always talking about nature-based innovation, empathy, because we understand that without it, basically just doesn't matter whatever you do if it doesn't has this human connection. Or as hard as it is, like learning to be human is, I think, all of our challenge. We believe in regenerative action, so let's not only talk about it, but let's do about it, and always searching for the newest and most integral techniques that we can find. That's what brought us to the Water Stories, and also collaboration. We understand that we will never be able to do all of the work, and if we don't recreate the, also talking about nature-based decisions, we need to create the nets between all of us that are searching for a better, brighter, more beautiful world. Next slide, please. So what do? We've been working on syntropic agricultural or successional agroforestry. It has many names nowadays. We combine these techniques with water retention landscapes and agroecology for ecosystem restoration, but always taking care of participatory methodologies. We understand that if the people that is living in the land is not aligned with what we're doing and how to do it, it will not be sustainable in time. So we are searching for and always asking ourselves, like, how can we create landscapes in harmony with nature to support not only us, but all of the living beings that are in this space? And how can we invite even more? And the human factor of all of this, it's a huge challenge, but we understand that it's not only like the hardest and the most needed one, but also the most beautiful whenever it happens. Like when we realize the power that we have, in a good sense, of course, it's just amazing. Next slide, please. And now I give it to Francisco.
Yes, and well, so happy to be here. Hi, everyone, from everywhere in this planet. And here is our planet, our spaceships, our mothership, in a universe that came to being, I don't know when, but it's here, and it has laws, and it has regularities, and it has a way of manifesting itself. So with this picture, we want to enter in what has been, what have been our learning process. It's been a long and very beautiful learning process to see and to accept how this machine, planetary interstellar machine works, and try to take all this knowledge to practical work, to work with people, to work with water, and to work with earth and living ecosystem and living beings. For us, it's very important to like get the picture that we are part of an intelligent macroorganism. Next, please. So we want to acknowledge and to show a little what has been our inspirations, our masters in this road, because to get to learn these universal laws, this nature functioning, this ecosystem mode of being, has been a very complex, not complicated, but complex task. Next, please. So there has been many people before us that have show the way for us, and we are very grateful for them. In this picture, we see the Chilean doctor Humberto Maturana and the Swiss based in Brazil researcher and farmer Ernest Getch, the creator of the Syntropic agriculture system. So we are part of an intelligent and sensitive system. We are not the intelligent part of this system. We are not the intelligent part. We are part of an intelligent system, so we have to behave de acuerdo in behalf of these laws, and this will give us in return love, peace, cooperation, abundance. But our historic road as civilization, as society, is like just learning how to behave in this manner and not to control everything. We are interconnected, we are interdependent, we are extremely interdependent in this complex network of relations, inter and intra-specific. So we are part of an autopoietic macroorganism. And this is our starting point. Next, please. Many people have inspired us. We have learned from naturalists, ecologists, agronomists, and diverse setup of people that are working to reconnect society and humanity with the laws of nature, and to try to understand what this means. And here I can talk about Masanobu Fukuoka, who is the Japanese researcher that create the methodology of the natural agriculture, and is the first one to introduce us to this ecosystemic worldview and this naturalistic approach by the hand of food production. That food production is so important because is what regulates ecosystems. Every living being eats, and every living being is eaten. So there's is where our function appears. And with Fukuoka, we entered that world like 20 years ago. And well, next, I cannot talk about all of them, but all of them have been inspired our way. Next, please, Raleigh. So here we have another set of people. This is not exhaustive. There are many more men and women that have inspired us, but these are the highlights. And here we can see Sepp Holzer, that we met like 10 years ago at the same time of Victor Schauberger, that is not here, but it's very important to mention it because we are talking about water. And we started to combine this view of how to heal ourselves, how to get to behave in the way the planet has designed so perfectly to be part of something that works, and not to try to remake everything with the small understanding we have of this universal phenomenon. So for me, Sepp Holzer is so important. It opens up my eyes to what nature wants to tell you, and how to listen to nature. What is important of intuition, the importance of dreams, but the importance also of doing, and to doing from small to big to have impact. We cannot heal the planet with only small efforts, say Sepp. We need to learn how to work with this like surgery process of remake the conditions for nature to thrive. And that's what we have learned in the Water Stories course so magnificently. Next, please. So many thanks to all these people, all these the ones that are behind them, and all this constellation of beings that have been devoting their lives to understand the phenomenon of being alive and being part of this marvelous system, and so intelligent and so sensitive. And here, especially in this in this picture, the people that inspire us of the water paradigm. We have Dr. Liu, Dr. Millán, Bernd Müller from Spain, Tamera, the great Michael Kravchik, one of my favorites, because how he translate how all this knowledge, sometimes a little abstract, to facts, and how these take it to practical work in Slovakia, their country, taking it to the government, and now doing amazing stuff with water restoration at country level. Rajendra Singh, and Zach Weiss, our personal present here master, that we are so grateful because 8 years and reading again and again Desert or Paradise, but not catching the details, the technical details, and the know-how of go to do a pond in this way. I couldn't learn it practically until we took the water stories course, and open up a world of possibilities for us. So much gratitude to Zach and all the team behind him. Next, please. So there are our masters, and now we talk about our context. Isn't it, Thomas?
Yes. So for all of those that are not familiar to Chile, we want to talk about a little bit. So where are we? So, and which are the challenges that we're facing? Next slide. So Chile is a super long country at the end of the world, some people say, and we have 3 different climates that coexist in this place. So we have a super long desert in the northern part that it's going south quite fast. Then we have a Mediterranean part, and in the southwest part you can see it more green. We call it the cold jungle or the template woods. So next slide. We have this kind of landscapes in the northeast part of our country, in places that used to be called San Francisco from the jungle. And this is what we can see now, like, and that's a name that given by the Spanish people that first arrived in here not that many years ago, if we talk about Earth time. And so challenges here are quite intense. So, and going backwards, it's a big one, but hope is the last thing you lose, they say. Next slide. And we have a huge Mediterranean part of our country that is currently going through a desertification process. So here people is where they have been growing the most amount of food in the country, and we're facing super fast changes, and the need is every time more popular somehow. Next slide. And in the southwest part, you can see these beautiful landscapes that are so green that people cannot realize when the desert is coming. So when we see those huge powlands or pastries that are basically green deserts in some of the occasions, it's harder to feel it, but it's going here as well. And all of these regions are also facing water scarcities through the last years. Next slide. And we had the fire reality, which is turning quite more intense as in the rest of the world. Last year, we had more than 1 million hectares that were burnt. And this, just right now, yesterday, I was in a fire here around in my place. So the thing about fires, flood, and drought happens also in here with quite a big intensity. Next slide. And more than 70% of the country is currently facing drought in some degree. And from the half somehow of the country to the north, there is no river that it's reaching currently the sea from the mountains. So we are in this spot of almost no turning back point of what we're facing. So, and the innovation is super, super needed. And the public world is now understanding it as well, not only from a speech, but shifting slowly towards action. Next slide. And this is one of the places that we've been working with one of the farmers that we've been going with, acompañando. And if you go to the next slide, you can see what happened this year that had just gone. So this kind of floods is something that haven't happened in some like almost 20 to 30 years in Chile. So it's something that at least in my life I hadn't seen before. And it started to happen, and we need to address it urgently. And this was facing the part of the country which is most populated. Like more than half of the population from Chile is in the zone which received all these floods. Next slide. And we also have a reality of forestry super intense in the central and southern part of the country, with many millions of hectares that has monocultures, and that has led to dry the rivers, the streams, and currently has been provoking many fires because people have understand that this is not like the sweet candy that was supposed to be when they started going towards this model. And here's a huge challenge that we're also trying to face with some of our partners. Next slide. And now we want to
Yes.
show you a little bit of what's been our learning process. Adelante, Francisco.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. A little like abstract of our context that I would like to share. We face very different realities in northern arid, semi-arid climate, Mediterranean climate, and temperate climate in the south. But we have like in all the country the monoculture problem, the industrial agricultural problem, and the water problem that has this drought, fire, and inundación problem. So we deal with different climate conditions with the same problems. And there's a lot of practical knowledge and context knowledge to address. And that's some part of our work, to being able to address all these situations, but in different climate cases. And that's important to know about Chile. Well, our learning process started when we were very young, asking the big questions of life. Next, please. Next slide. One of the main factors or the main like moments is our contact with people. Many different group of people. We have been doing workshops, more than 100, for more than at least 10 years of workshop gatherings, working with people, talking with people, being part of people. It's not us and the people, we are the groups of people. And lot of what we have been learning is created in these moments, and lots of the answers came to get to the work, not always knowing what it's gonna be about, but in the interaction we have been able to grow our learning and our data knowledge, our all our experience is like created in this dance with people. So here we have a picture working with small farmers in the central part of Chile. Actually, this is the place where was inundated, was flooded. Now I get the word, flooded with this water, with this river, the main river in Chile, Rio Maipo. And the work is continuing here. We work with small farmers, partnering with state institutions. Next, please. And we work also with people in our places. This is where I'm talking now, one of our showrooms in Chile. Tomas is talking in the other one, a little more north. we do a lot of this type of events because it's part of our learning process. Next, please. Last thing about the last topic. Here in Chile, we had a word that is minga. Minga is collective work, and collective work is a strategy, is a tool, is a methodology for making regenerative processes came to real life. Is a systemic process, and we use it and we promote it a lot because we believe that it's the way nature is like pushing us to work in teams, and the things you can achieve in a small time in big teams is incredible. We have learned a lot through that, so it's an important place of our learning process. And here we want to show a little bit about syntropic agriculture. And here it says the art of sequestering the sun's energy. As we've been saying, planet Earth is a system, is a living system, and it has ways of connecting and functioning with the whole universe. Syntropic agriculture is an understanding of how we can be part of that process of gathering the sun's energy for creating energy, food, and everything we need here. Syntropic agriculture is based on the philosophy of syntropy, that is a characteristic of the way the planet functions, from simple to complex, from little amount of relationship to a lot of relationship, to not much efficiency in the processing of the energy to a lot of efficiency. And it's the force, and you can name it in other ways, not only syntropy, but is a force that drives evolution. So anywhere in the planet, syntropic forces that gather and order the energy to create novelty and to push evolution is working. And the mechanism that works there is natural succession. Natural succession works with this characteristic that is syntropy, that creates new energy from processes, at the difference of entropy that uses energy to function and doesn't create nothing new. It needs more to function. Mechanic system function that way. You need to put more input to the system to work. But living systems, ecosystems, work in this syntropic way that creates energy for the future so evolution can continue. And that's an endless process. Always we, siempre y cuando, podríamos decir, we take part of this process, because we, as one of the main evolutionary factors of this process, have a keystone role and very important role. If we don't play that role, the syntropic machine doesn't produce this energy, and evolution is kind of stopping or going back to being able to go forward again, and going back to the place where we will not have this control of the world, or we understand and master this consciousness and this power, or we are going to get back to where we was before. an animal that is not much different of an elephant, a bear, a monkey, or a fish. So we have a choice, and that's the regenerative process. Next, please. Our work with syntropic agriculture or successional agroforestry systems is part of our working with water, because the water cycle is completed when we get this skin of the earth that is able to capture sunlight. When we do water restoration, we move earth, we build dams, we dig terraces, crater gardens, a lot of features, water features, but they always need, and they always are a condition for the forest to come to collect the sun's energy, cool down the planet, and let the climate work. So for us, water work and planting work is the same work. So this is very important in our learning process, and we are known in Chile for merging Sepp Holzer's work with Ernest Goch's work, and never like designing with one in mind or the other in mind. In some part of my soul, they get merged, they fusion, like Goku and Vegeta from Dragon Ball. They did this and they never come apart again. Water and earth are one thing, and vegetation is for me, is our operating system. Everywhere is where we push buttons, and we tell the soil, where we tell the microbiology how to work, and we have that power. So we need to discover that power. That's why our educational approach and our pedagogical approach is so strong, but because we need to learn. It's not given. We need to learn it, and we need to get to that learning process. That's why, again, we are so grateful to Water Stories community, because it gives us that. So now we want to expand the Water Stories community to every continent, and we are working how to bring it to Latin America. Next slide, please. So in our learning process, we start with our own homes, and we started with our own most close friends, getting dirty and getting being friends with mistakes, because this has been a constructive learning process. We have been learning by doing. That's John Dewey, I think. But it's true. So this is my place where I'm talking right now. Next, please. And like in 2007 and 16 and 2017, we started dreaming in a prairie without much life, what we could do in like an acre. I hear you are seeing my first crater garden 9 years ago, in a place with a size, with a shape that now I wouldn't even be in 20% of what I did, because it's so big, it's so like out of context. But this gave me it opened the door for me to learn more and to show how to do it. So the mistake turned up to be my like where my ground to talk about this, to show about this, to say I did it, I don't. And for years it took the name of the whole. It was the whole, because no one knew what to do with this whole. And in next pictures, next please, we started, and this is how all was before. Like a prairie, no trees. There is Tamara, my couple. creator and also learner of this process. And after we planted edible gardens before knowing the syntropic logic and the syntropic method, and only knowing our water approach from the books, especially Desert or Paradise from Seth Holzer. And there's the crater garden, and there's an edible gardens, and edible forest gardens in the English way. And then the after process came in the next picture, where we can see how this, after understanding more of this logic, where there you can see the crater and like nothing there in terms of vegetation, in terms of food. You can see the little house that is now our base where I'm talking right now. And the next one, please. So in this, it's where we do it today, where we are today. Syntropic forest, the crater garden is full of trees and lots of things happening, more than 80 fruit trees and lots of things going on. This is a learning laboratory. Everything is tested here and get out tested to our clients. Next, please. More of this, of what is here. Another one, please. And now we had a little forest. The crater garden is like a microclimate and lots of things going on here. Everyone who wants to visit can visit. And now we want to talk about our other place. Next, please.
So
it's Salinas de Puyalli, where Tomas is at right now.
Yes. So greetings from Salinas de Puyalli. Next, please. This is in the central coast in Chile. So we are surrounded by eucalyptus monoculture. The place that we're talking about is the one in the middle of the picture. And you can see the comparison with neighbors on the left, who are actually spending more water than us. And this is just to show you like where we're starting. So this is what can be done in what used to be eucalyptus monoculture. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a couple of months after we started working here. So we cut it down the eucalyptus, we made terraces, and this was a place where I was able to do everything I had learned until that moment. Of course, I didn't know everything, and I still don't, and I will never. But this was a place to experiment a lot, and it was amazing to see how fast the nature can answer to this interaction. So we made some terraces that you can see in the upper part of the picture, and in the lower right, you can see what was the pond that was holding mainly the water from the road, the public road. And in the next picture, you can see what's happened in 2 years and how many things have shifted and how many things have been done once and twice and even 3 times, gathering all of the feedback from SAC during the process of the course and from different conversations with Francisco as well. And it's amazing how fast nature can answer to this kind of landscape acupuncture. And this has also been a showroom, as Francisco said before, for many people to come to see, because we're in the point in which the desert is limiting with the Mediterranean part somehow today. So you can see also a winter house in the left and the chicken coop, and many things are happening here I'm not an expert in none of those, but in a constant learning. And through the courses that we've done here, and thanks for everyone that has been part of it, because we've done this also through a lot of mingas, as Francisco was saying before. And we are, of course, open to receive people that wants to see these different things. So just to show you, like, one of my biggest joys of this past year. Next slide, please. In what you can see here, and that's why we have understood that working with land with syntropic agriculture is basically turning that land into a water retention landscape. And it's amazing because in what you're seeing right now, last year I found morels, this mushroom that in Chile is classic from lots of regions more south. And to find that, and with also other 20 different species of fungi, it means basically that something is going on. That I don't know how good, how bad, how fast, how slow, but something quite interesting is going on in here. So working with the terraces and incorporating lots of woody debris and gardening debris from the place where I'm living, it has been a whole trip. Next slide, please. We wanted to show this picture of what I first did, like only after reading the Desert from Paradise, and you can see how sharp the taludes, the walls of this kind of pond were, and this was one of the big things to be redone. And if you go to the next slide, you can see how it turned into a way more flat kind of landscape. And this is from the winter from last year. And that water is only coming from the public road. So it's been a beautiful process to see how how much water can this hold, and how to make the spillways. That's been a huge challenge and a constant learning process as well. And to see these in the region where I live, it's quite mind-blowing, at least for me. Next slide. And we wanted to talk to you guys about some of our projects. Maybe from here on, Francisco, let me know what you think. We could yes. Make it a little bit more open, because we're going to talk about different projects in which we've been working from this past 2 years mainly, and some of them are a little bit older. So many questions, I think, might arise from here. We'll go, Francisco.
Yes. Let's go with this and we can see it. Well, this first project we are seeing here is in the Central Valley, in a place called Limache, in the same region that is located Tomas. And it's like our first, before the course, a big project of gathering water from a big catchment area, and without all the elements that we learned in the course, in the water stories course. So it's very it went very good, but with a lot of luck, not a lot of knowledge, because when the winter came, so much water came, and the water get over the dam, because the client didn't make the spillway, and I didn't get them to know much important it was. I said we need to do a spillway, but they didn't do it, and water overflow, and it almost take all the dam away. But it was saved because the rain stopped in the right moment, and now we're working like getting this better. But the context always is the chief here, is what command. So if these people don't want and don't have the time and the money to do everything what I'm telling. I'm here like a consultant, not doing the work. So they take some things and other, and I have to watch and put my fingers like this to hopefully they do everything I say. It's part of the learning process. That tires are not part, someone asked, are not part of the scene. It could be not been there. Next picture, please. I think it's the same project. Next picture. Yes. Here the big learning was we can catch so much water with one rain. So much. This water keep here for 6 months without any other water input. And it was a big success for this place. Next one, please. Well, this is Syntropic agriculture working with small farmers in the institutional state context. Next one, please. Another work with farmers in the Central Valley using Syntropic agriculture, always understanding that when we say Syntropic agriculture, we are working with the water cycle as well. We are not taking that knowledge to another place or in pause. Is always there, because in a flat land, sometimes the best you can do for water restoration is plant a forest. The context will tell you that. Here we have the context in both pictures that we have just seen, that we need food production, because these are farmers. They need to sell to live, and they give us the institution behind them. They give us money to make them produce. So we have to, the context is to make a match in how can we regenerate producing food. This is a good challenge. Next, please. This is the same place that was flooded. Next, please. This is one of our oldest forests. It's kind of sad because 1 month ago it got burned, because wildfires here are a big, huge problem. No one is safe from this, because our neighbors are monocultures, our neighbors are unmanaged forests. There's no water management at all. Water is private. So, but this is one of our earlier successes in how to bring a barren land to, in 3 years, an stratified forest. Next, please. So we need to do something about this. This is one of our workshops in southern Chile, temperate climate, and this here is when we are planting with the group a syntropic forest. And in the next picture, please, we have what happened in 2 months. Life is coming, is manifesting in these systems, and we can acknowledge that, we can see it, and people can see it. So it's so strong for making cultural and social work. Do a syntropic garden, do a water restoration pilot or mini project, because that will it will gather people around it, and then you can start talking. It has been a big learn to not going directly to social issues, but going with nature to social issues, and going with nature intervention. So, next picture, please. This is Santa Sofía de Locañas, isn't it, Tomas? You want to tell us something about this?
So this is in the pre-mountain, or the beginning of the mountains of the central part of Chile. And this was a project that the owners had also almost like lost complete faith of what could be done. And through a couple of mingas of this collective works, we were able to create this landscape. So we made these terraces, always combining the two techniques that Francisco said before. And it's been quite amazing how it has evolved. So maybe the next slide, please. And it turned into such a beautiful place that just a couple of days ago, the owner's daughter got married in this place. So it was such a joy for us to see how fast things can change and how people also start getting back hope. And that's something that we believe that it's really, really important in this process, that we're living in a super catastrophic times. And when we feel helpless and when we feel clueless or the lack of capacity to shift where we're going, it can be really, really depressing. And we are trying to give some hope to the people through the restoration of their land, of their communities, of their network. Next slide, please. And this is from some pictures from one of our northest projects, is in Canela and La Serena, fourth region, where we were testing some check dams on the left side in what were previous gullies. These are part of a bigger project that we're going to see ahead. And in the right, you can see the effect of working on the contour lines with Syntropic agriculture. And after 2 years with like almost one watering a month, like it was 15 waterings in a whole year, we can see how the vegetation starts to pop up again with lots of color and strength. Next slide. So this is the place that we've shown before with the rock check dams. So what we were aiming here is to create a pond in the lowest part of this watershed with a catchment area of 8.5 hectares. And in the next slide, please, we can see what we developed last year as well. It was a small pond that would act as a sediment trap or sediment harvester for what would be the future main pond of this land. So we're talking about a place where last year there was almost no rain in this place, but a couple of years ago, some aludes, kind of floodings, appeared over there. And this is part of a bigger project, which is called Regenerative Solar Park. Pancho?
Yes, I just wanted to say in this picture that here is the first project that we did together applying the water storage course knowledge. So it's the first dam that we did it in the way it was supposed to. Yeah, and it was such a great experience to get into the details, because it's not just putting earth, it's not just digging holes, it's not just getting from a map that you designed it to the reality. It's so much little details that get combined with the context and with the techniques. So for me, this was a great before and after in our work.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that. So this is the kind of work that we are hoping not to need to redo again, like the previous ones that were constant learning. And yes, this is part of a bigger picture in which there's going to be solar panels and agriculture with local people and organic waste management. Many things happening here, but could turn into a really beautiful spot in the future years. Next slide. And this is a super interesting project that we're developing with a forestry company in the south of Chile, in a place that, as you can see in the landscape, basically all you can see are monocultures of eucalyptus and prairies that are completely degraded. And in that small circle is where we did our first test that you can see in the next slide, please. Really? So here we did a first intervention of what, no, the one before. That one. So a first intervention of what could be done somehow in the shifting process of a monoculture of eucalyptus towards native forest, or other intentions could be fruits or orchard, or many things that syntropic agriculture give us all of those chances. And this is in an indigenous community that was facing and is facing the challenge of what can we do with all of these eucalyptus that just won't stop coming. And we believe that under those trees, nothing can be done.
Yes,
Nacho,
can I add something there? Chile is one of the is the fourth country with more hectares of forestry monoculture, especially eucalyptus and pinus. And this is been all over 30 years or 40 years, and it has degraded the landscape, and not only the landscape, also the society living in those places in a way that is hard to imagine the impact of this industry. This model that we are working is unique in Chile and is groundbreaking, because if we have some success here, everything and a lot of this reality could change, because even the forestry companies aren't like fine with this. It's so bad that even the company wants it anymore, but there's no alternative. There's no alternative now. So what will come about this work is one, I think, of the biggest potential impacts we have in our future to come.
Yes.
Next,
that's
please.
Oh,
this one is the same project with the same company, and this is burned land, monoculture land, barren land, the worst case. This picture you cannot see the worst, but it's very, very ugly, and it's very depressing. It's like being in Mordor. You know Mordor? Where the Lord of the Rings, the Black Sauron lives. It's really like being there. No life can thrive there. There's no livelihood. There's no employment. There's no water. There's no food production. There's no education, and this could be a regenerative park for this del programa en inglés, Tomás, Desarrollo Territorial Regenerativo, Regenerative Development,
Local
Territorial Development Project. And we want to start from water, because it's the base of everything. We cannot build regenerative process without healing the water cycle. And it's very amazing and interesting how, once you understand this systemic and complexity interconnecting picture of starting with ecosystemic processes, water, vegetation, everything will start to gather around. And that's the idea behind a regenerative park. And it's very important to address these type of works with this systemic view. Next picture, please. So Tomas, can you go with this?
So this one is another project in the central coast of Chile with a client, a friend nowadays that had gone too far, too strong, too crazy, trying to shift the landscape, and he created a huge, how do you say, herida? Scratch
Wounds.
wound, a huge wound in the landscape. So this was our concept plan to start rehealing what he'd done before. And in the next slide, please. Here we can see what is shifting somehow. So we created big terraces with a whole interconnected water flow process that it's still in the beginning of what could be done here. And it's been one of the biggest projects we've done as of now. And we're eager to see what happens during the winter. We mixed some terraces with some ponds, lots of spillways, lots of sediment traps. There's another pond in the lower part of the creek. And we are waiting to see how this will be developed in time. And next year comes a part of the painting in green, all of what we've moved. And as always, we have to adapt ourselves to the budget from the different projects. So that's a huge learning. So what can we do with the current budget as of now? And how big can we go with making a complete process of whatever our interventions are? So that's a constant process, and we believe that what all of the knowledge that we've taken from the course and from the professional sessions, it really enters to the body once you start implementing. It doesn't matter the scale, but only with the implementing, with the hands-on projects, you really get to understand why SAG was saying this or that, or SEP was writing this or that, and how important those things can be. So next slide, please. So this is another view of the same projects. You can see like the main pond with the inflow process and the relevance of working with slope. So whether you use or not stones, and where is it going to move through, and that's the guy in the blue and the guy in orange are the guys talking now. Super happy of ending that phase of that project. And I believe this one was the next slide, please.
The last one.
Yeah, that was the last picture for projects. And yeah, there's a lot to keep learning and a lot to keep connecting with locals from Chile, from the different regions, from the different countries. And we're so happy that we are part of the water stories community and trying to make our best for this knowledge to be expanded and for us all to be collaboratively healing the pieces of land that we're working on.
Yeah, I would like to add that we show our most highlighted projects. We are working as a study center, as an educational hub, and there's a lot of people working and learning in this process. I would like to thank all the people that have been with us, support us, trust in us, and all the ones who want to connect to our community. We are open in the social network. We have projects in almost every region in Chile and in lots of places, mostly small projects, but here we show some big projects, and we are working to ampliar, like to get big the scope of the projects, but still being able to support the small projects and the community that is like growing. We want to be in both processes. being like in the front line of big projects to get the way paved, but with our groups and regional and like neighborhood groups to support the learning process. That's it. I think in the water stories course, we found a place not just to learn, but to feel confident in us, because without that support, it's very difficult to get to these big projects where you are the first one to being doing it. So again, thanks to Zach. Now we can go ahead with the talking on the questions. I don't know, Zach, if you wanna, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, just amazing presentation. Thank you guys so much for sharing your approach, your strategies, your works. There's so many good comments throughout. It's wonderful to show so many different examples, and people can really understand that this is happening, that people want it. And like you mentioned, that even the people who own these big tracts of forestry are saying, this doesn't work. We need help. We need to do something different. And that's a huge potential point for change. So you guys are doing just such incredible work in your region. I think also really marrying the work of Sepp Holzer and Ernst Gosch makes so much sense. And I think it's one of those things where all of the masters, or a lot of them, naturally tie those two things together. Like Sepp is always, it's never just about creating the water bodies. It's also treating the vegetation in the catchment area. Rajendra says exactly the same thing. And so I really love that, seeing that mirrored in you guys and how you fuse them together like Goku and Vegeta. I love that analogy of just, they are one and the same thing. You have to do them together. And that's where the real magic happens. It's, by supporting the whole web of life, not just certain pieces of it, that you get that full complexity and full potential of the landscape. And I think one thing where you guys are really leading the way is in solving socioeconomic issues with this approach. There's so much need for that in the world, and it's such a challenging thing to do, to help the people who really need it the most in a way that delivers a yield in a time scale that makes sense and is within their budget and what they can do. And you guys are doing such an excellent job of that. I really like the Minga concept as well. I think, that amount of positive movement that can happen by people working together, there's something really powerful in that, both in the projects, but then in the relationships between those people, as they can come back to the project and see the results of their actions, and then their relationships build and they start doing more of it. So I just think all the way through, you guys are doing an incredible job spreading this approach and strategy in your own region. We have a bunch of questions that came in, and we'll also get to live questions. So folks, if you want to raise your hand using the raise hand feature at the bottom, we'll ask on some folks to ask their questions live, and I'll ask you to unmute to do so. And we also have some questions that came in throughout. Let's see, where do we start here? I mean, a couple of questions are, asking just big picture. We have this need for better natural resource management and respect of nature. And what do you guys find as the best impacts in this regard? And another question tying these two together, when it comes to healing the planet, we need to think and act strategically. Where would you guys send people towards? I mean, I think this is the focus of your whole presentation in a lot of ways, but if you had to summarize, where should people put their energy into when, after this presentation, they're saying, I want to do this in my region? What advice would you have for them?
So I think that one super interesting thing that we've learned is to follow the water principles, which is like go with the least resistant path. There has been so many times that we've tried to change the world against the flow, and that is just so exhausting, and sometimes it's just not feasible at all. Like learning to work with the people that really want to change, and that it's willing to create newness and to walk that path, that's being super relevant for us in the process. And in terms of the techniques, it's what we said before, like it's the combination of the water and land with the trees, with the green, with the and what water stories gives people. It's a beautiful approach of doing that. And I think, yeah, it has to do with trying to find the correct partners that will make the job as fun as possible. Sometimes you have to do the bad part as well and the boring part as well, whatever. But to have a bigger scope that people really want to make the shift and not only talk about it, because it happens a lot. So taking care of Mother Earth, it starts by taking care of ourselves. So that's something that it's not taught in schools nowadays. You have to die many times to learn how to do it. Angie, you want to add something?
Yes, very short. I think get some small thing done. I loved when in the course they did us to make it this maqueta, this small scale model with the shovel. So I went and did it with my son. No machine, no piece of land, it's just a model. And now he knows with 8 years what's a spillway, what's a dam, what's the catchment area. Every concept is there, even in a drawing. So if you cannot do it with a shovel, do it with your pen and paper. Get your thoughts out of there and talk it with mother, with brother, with friend, with neighbor, with son, with, with whenever you can. And that's the start.
Awesome. I love that. That's such great advice. And, I think this is also one of the best things. I love that you brought your son into it, because this is one of the best things we can do for future generations is give them this knowledge, give them these abilities. And if they can learn it from a young age, like your son, just imagine what he's going to be able to do in 10, 20 years time. He's going to have such better ways of conceptualizing all of this than all of us here, because he started at a young age. So I think that's really powerful too. If you have kids, make opportunities for them to have these learning experiences. They can be fun, they can be entertaining, and they can be incredibly rewarding. Some people were asking, really interested in how the water bodies are constructed, if there's a liner or no liner, soil types. Do you guys want to share just a little bit about that? And this ties into as well. Well, I kind of answered the mosquito question in the chats, but if you want to touch it all on mosquitoes and algae as well, there's another question that came in.
Uh, we have the master here. No, I think there are generic questions, very specific. Also, no liners. At and least the context is very like restricted, or you want a pool for swimming, and it will be half of the pool with liner. Not every. We want to connect water from the atmosphere with the body of the earth. So liners and cement will be used like in very specific cases, and the least amount of these materials, we try to work with clay, we try to work with rocks, with earth. And for mosquitoes, we give different depths and different configurations of the design, and the mosquitoes are get into the equation because no one wants lots of mosquitoes if they do a water body. But there are ways, and you need to get from the general to the specific to get to the details. But always, if you start small, you can solve it in the way. And there's now, not when we started, but now there's a community to ask. When we started, there was no one to ask. So that's a great difference from where we are not today. Knowledge is at hand, and we share knowledge. We cannot not share it. We will have nightmares if we keep our knowledge to us. It's impossible.
Awesome. Beautiful answer. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think that to answer like the technical questions, the best way to learn those is in the water stories course. Like, I think that there are many things you can read and you can see in the text or videos, but going through the process with the practical part on it, with a community that is supporting this learning process, I think is the best way to learn it. And I wanted to add to one of the questions that was over there that said like, can I go and start doing things just by reading something or seeing a video? And I wanted to share about my story that I was in India when I read Seb Holzer's Desert or Paradise. And 1 week after, I was directing two huge machines in Malayalam, a language in which I could barely speak, creating a huge pond. So, and yeah, I mean, I think crazier people can go bigger in a smaller amount of time with bigger risks, of course, and will have bigger consequences. And not that recommended, but some of us learn by falling many, many times and still not learn. But yeah, and I mean, it's just like the other projects that we were talking with Francisco before. We see it backwards now. What would have done differently? And so many things would have done differently, but I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think we should like I don't know, punish yourself for not doing it that way. I am from the position that it's better to do with at least some content and knowledge, of course, than not doing anything at all. Like otherwise, there's no learning happening.
That's a great point. I think in this common day and age, we're so scared of failure when failures are how we learn. And so I would echo that exactly. I think it's great to straight away get out and do something, but do something the scale where if it's a total failure, it doesn't matter. You haven't wasted a bunch of time and money. It's not going to create a bunch of erosion. Like you mentioned, Francisco, this is where the model building in the course comes. The first thing is do a little model where you're not going to cause any issues. You'll learn a lot by immediately going into doing things, but the odds of you doing everything just right after reading a book, I'd say, are impossible unless if you're a total savant. And so, scale things appropriately. And the more you can experience with others, the faster your knowledge can go forward. So, do a project with Francisco and Tomas, or do our course, or participate in these projects, and you can learn a lot quicker. You can learn everything on your own through trial and error and failure. And that is a great way to learn, but you can also speed up your learning and get a lot of the failures out of the way in learning from other people's failures and mistakes. And this is where I'm incredibly grateful for Sep and Regendra that have done all these magnificent failures and can share them and help other people not recreate the same mistakes. So it's a balance, and you want to find for yourself how much you want to do trial and error, how much help and support you want. And I'll say too, you know, building on what you guys were saying, if you do it with others, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more enjoyable. And so there's also that piece that it's going to tend to have more longevity if you engage in it with others as well.
Yes.
Susan, would you like to, I think it's a good time to open it up for some live questions. And folks, if you have live questions, raise your hand. But Susan, do you want to unmute yourself and go with your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I live in the United States, and so we need like a lot of permits and like civil engineering to do these like large earthwork things. I'm wondering what kind of obstacles you have where you were doing those, because it looked like you were doing large amounts of earthwork, and if you had to get engineering work and permits and all that.
You want to go, Pancho?
I can do it very shortly. That's a reality. In Chile, we are just now facing that reality. We have to learn to read the context, and we have this advice to pedir perdón mejor que pedir permiso. Is to
Forgiveness is
give,
better than permission, or forgiveness is easier than permission.
Exactly. Because we are like after the steps of SEP, and that was the way. Laws and institutions are just starting to understand the power behind the nature-based solutions, and we need to show them, and we need to work first with ones who want to permit this, but parallel, we need to go to get things straight, do a lot of paperwork, do good documentation, and fight that fight. We cannot leave it and do as if it doesn't there. It is restrictive, but you can always do something, and when you have no other way, it could be, in my case, better to do something and then try to work with the consequences of that work. That's because of the planetary context. We are facing a big global crisis, and it's like it's there. So you have to decide how much is that a burden for you, how much is that is such a burden and is such heavy that I don't mind if I have the law with me or not, but it's context what will inform. Don't go there and expose yourself to jail if no one's gonna notice, for example. So take a good reflection, but always go ahead, here is very restrictive, we had found, but we have found that in the meantime we are going forward.
Yeah, I would like to add
Yes.
something that if you are a more cautious human being and you don't want to deal with the consequences, something that has worked a lot for us is how to name the project. That's something that we've talked a lot about it in the course. And given that there's lots of things that are not well understood as of now, like today, the word pilot or testing or whatever, it can be really helpful for politicians and policy makers or fiscalization process, for them to be easier to say, okay, go for it. Like, I'm not doing this property. This is a pilot that we want to test and blah, blah, blah. And we don't go as big as maybe needed, but we need to start creating the arguments for the new regulation to happen. And it, again, as I said before, some people are more eager to risk and some other are more cautious, and you have to choose how to address it from the different sides of the water.
Yeah, that makes sense. But like a lot of it is like the site visibility. Like if your site is visible to more
Yes.
people, or if it's more, I guess, secluded, I feel like people are willing to do different things that way.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of factors that weigh into that decision. You know, what would the potential consequences be? How likely is it to have an issue? And lots of different ways to navigate those. It's also helpful to understand, just like Thomas was saying, well, you know, you might not be able to build a pond, but you might be able to build a fire mitigation structure. And in fact, they might not be able to legally prevent you from creating a fire mitigation structure because of the laws that enable people to basically prevent catastrophes on their land. So there's a lot of different ways to approach. I think ultimately doing any action for nature requires some level of civil courage in our modern age, which is really concerning, but it's ubiquitous around the world. And we're in this place where these regulatory structures are in place that are almost suffocating, to the extent that even when I'm doing a project for the United States Department of Defense, for example, they're saying we should ask forgiveness instead of permission, because even though, you know, they're directly tied into the government and they're privy to all these rules, they're saying, yeah, we're not going to apply for a permit unless if we absolutely need to, because they know the process is expensive and difficult. And so I think a lot of it is do something, find something that's okay, that's either below the thresholds where it would get noticed or below the thresholds where it would cause a big issue for you. We're in this place where we need some Sepp Holzers to just say, screw it all, I'm following the laws of nature, not the laws of man. And these are the trailblazers that then other people can point to and say, you should let me do this because they did that there, and here's the results, and here's what it looks like 10 years later. So you need some people to just blaze the trail ahead, and then that in its wake creates an easier and easier conduit for other people to replicate and do similar types of work. And that's where I think a lot of these masters and innovators become kind of prickly people, because they're constantly just beaten down by society of don't do things this way, don't do things this way, fines for this and fines for that. And it takes some courageous people to start breaking through some of those barriers of policy, but also just thought and the way we think about things.
Francisco, do you have a place where you have some of your like before and after shots? So if we were trying to like show people like, oh, if you do these types of things, this is the results you can get. Like I have a very similar site to one you did. It's just a totally different climate. And to try and get engagement, it's with my father. Like if you do this, that you could transform your landscape and it would be working for you instead of against you. I think having those photos available so that when people are trying to approach these ideas with people, they can see it works, kind of thing.
Yes, yes, that's very important. We are not the best at taking photos. We always with Tomas are, well, this is not just the same angle. We are always like very overpassed by the work. So pictures are the last thing. We know that they are important. Now we are working more with team, not only me and Tomas. So we take the friend that is going to take photos. We take the time to take the photos. So we are starting to gather that material. And I want to link that with one of the questions that is in the answer and question and answers, the Mauricio Ramos, that is one of our colleagues and friend and teammate, because we need photos, but we need data. How much water will be gathered in this place after this rain? How much water will this dam hold? This is the KPI, key productive indicators. Lots of our projects that are going with companies, with state, are asking this. And this may is a question for you, Zach, because we are behind this data. And I know it's not always ready at hand because we know our reality that we are making projects and creating the data at the same time, and is most of the effort is on creating the project, and some of the effort is on doing all the systematization of the data. How could we do I don't know, a repository of or a resource of data that will be on India, on Kravchik, Slovakia, on the US, on Europe, on Africa, on South America, that we could share to get this legal process, this like confident making process, get a little more oily. I don't know if you say oily, but like flowing.
Yeah, grease the process. Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think it's one of the things that, in a way, is kind of holding back the development of some of this, because we can see the results, but everyone wants the numbers. I break it down into there's a few different levels of investigation that you can do that are, almost assured to represent some of the change. One of the, and I'll say with all of these, the biggest issue is collecting the control data, because when someone realizes this is possible, they don't want to do 2 to 5 years of doing nothing to collect the control data to then have good data of their project. They want to go ahead with the project. Their landscape has issues that need fixing. So that's one of the big, this is why we don't have good metrics on a project like Rajendra's, because when they started 35 years ago, they didn't think they were going to revive all of these rivers and create this big change. They were just trying to survive. But as far as metrics, one of the easiest that I found is in bioacoustics. And so this is essentially just recording the acoustics of an area and then running it through a program that identifies the different species that are heard. And you can really clearly paint the biodiversity increase in animal species just by simple sound recordings. Similarly, you can do that
Wow.
with actual studies, people going out on the landscape, but this bioacoustics is pretty interesting because of how you could essentially just set it up and leave it in place and have it record every so often, and get metrics that way. There's the calculations that you can do to show just how much water is being stored in the water bodies and structures, but I think that doesn't really paint a good accounting. I think it's a very small piece of the puzzle, but you can at least get some numbers there. And then the better measurements are also more expensive, which makes it again a challenge. But so one of the pieces is actually measuring groundwater, and whether you have wells near the project area or whether you're putting in specific groundwater monitoring wells, you can actually watch the level of water in the ground usually come up over the time period of these projects. Again, you need to ideally have a bunch of baseline data beforehand to really show that impact. And then something that I see almost no one doing, but I think has maybe the most potential, is in measuring photosynthetic performance of a landscape. And this would be basically having an infrared camera and a red or blue spectrum, and then measuring the difference between those. You can see how much total light is being absorbed by the plants in that process. And I think if people started doing this, this would be one of the biggest things to show the actual impact, because if we can make a landscape that is photosynthesizing for 100 days of the year, actually photosynthesize for 200 days of the year or 300 days of the year, now you could say this is providing this much cooling and this much production and this much production for biological production for the landscape. So those are kind of my favorite KPIs, key performance indexes. They all have different challenges, but I would love someone to just make it easy for people, and there to even be a nonprofit that provides the equipment and does the baseline studies, because there's very few people even really accurately measuring these things, even though we have the tools to do it, because it's expensive and difficult and hard to learn.
What about partnering with like universities, like their hydrology departments, and maybe getting like a professor on board, and then the college would be paying for all the instrumentation to monitor those things? That's a possibility.
Definitely, and that's happening in some cases. I think the best example of this is actually from the University of Arizona, where they're doing a lot of studies on Tucson and Tucson's water usage. That is itself a great success story. And someone mentioned in the chat as well, Brad Lancaster's concept of pre-legal, which I think is really important to bring up for the
Oh,
policy questions. These things aren't illegal, they're pre-legal. They're so forward thinking that they're not yet legal. And it's a much better way to think about and talk about it, because then, you know, that people understand there's positive intent behind it. Whereas as soon as you say illegal, people are thinking something's wrong, something's amiss, there's some bad judgment or poor motive behind it.
Yes. Zach, how much acquaintance or relation you have with the Slovakian process of this all Kravchik and Pokorny, all these guys? They are doing a lot of data, I think, to being working at a state level, no?
They
Are they reachable? Do you have some kind of chat with them?
Yeah, I've met them. I've met a number of them, Nicole and Martin, and we actually are gonna have Martin for a future webinar. They're doing a lot of pieces. I think they're doing a lot more in the mathematical modeling side of things, which is, I think, the most available right now. And like you alluded to before, they've done some great work showing countrywide in Slovakia the impacts of draining water and storing water, holding water. So that's probably the best, one of the better developed projects in terms of metrics. There's also Willie Smith's work in Borneo, where they've been covering rainfall or recording rainfall and have seen a 25% increase in rainfall. And then Rajendra's more recent projects, they've been doing more documentation of the process and the results. And they are starting to partner with universities, and we're actually trying to connect Anastasia Marnikonov, one of the creators of the biotic pump theory, with Rajendra and his projects, so that they can start to gather metrics to show, you know, an on-the-ground result of their theory, essentially. One question for you guys is, where does the funding come from for your projects?
So, good question. Still searching for the answer. No. No, the fundings are coming basically from whether it's privates, like people that own land and want to restore them and has some budget to do those works, or whether it's companies, or in the case that we talked about of forestry company, or others. And when we want to work with small farmers, usually they won't have a budget for this kind of thing. So the way to deliver this knowledge and practices is through government institutions that are interested in people to be able to learn or apply these different things, given the context, like the climate context that we are facing. So nowadays, like almost all of the institutions that has to do with agricultural work, they're all moving towards nature-based solutions or this kind of thing. So what used to be Chinese for everyone, now it's part of the uh, Chinese, and sorry, that's some expression you use in Chile. Something not understood by many of them. Now it's turning into part of the regulation almost. Like this is where the public money should start going to nature-based solutions or things that way. And Pancho, you want to add something? All right.
Yes, I also would like to say that it's important that for many years we run this study center with no budget. And this is, here we say autogestión, is like making workshops with not a lot of money, not charging more, but it was a phase that we were young and we were like germinating to this, and it was a way to learn. But when you want to make this your job, your work, you need to start to go into these discussions or to the private people and make them pay what this cost. And unless you do this process, you will reach a roof soon. And then you won't be able to do this for cheap, and you won't be able to be scaling or learning more. So this is a moment, and this happened to us. Tomas is very like important in this process. When he showed me this reality, I wasn't able to imagine how to came from this first logic to this other logic. And now, if I want to support a project that has no budget, I can just go and do it. No money talking. No money talking. Just go and do it. I have my work in another place, and that's how it's being shaping and transforming for us. But if you want to do this your work, it's the best thing to do, I think, is to go to the places where the problems are big and where the budget are not spending in these things and are spent in just other solutions that are not working, and try to hack or be there to say, well, why you don't try your 1% of your budget in this solution? That 1% is a lot of money for us. We can do this showroom, this piloting, this starting point, and then continue talking. So that's, I think, it's not replicable, but it's our experience to get from one point to that other point and not leave that beginning, the starting point, like, oh, I don't want that anymore, because that logic of no money is still relevant in many places. And we do a lot of work that place had no money. We want to work there. We do the work to get the money to there. It will take 1 year, 2 years, but we will find the institution, name the kid with the right name to get the money where we want to get it. And that's how we're starting this past year, not much more. And it's a lot of work, the commercial work, to see how we are going to get that funding for all the different contexts. Is hard work. And we spend a lot of our time with Tomas, emailing, thinking, talking with this one, talking with that one, to get that to happen.
That is so important. Thanks for sharing that. I think this is a piece that so many people who enter the course and do the course struggle with. And it's so amazing to see your guys' growth. I remember Francisco, it was probably a year and a half or 2 years ago. You're like, how do we keep doing this? There's no money. We can't do projects. I can't keep going, and kind of reaching this breaking point. And now you guys have so many projects in all the directions and ample funding. And I think, we all get into this not to make money, but to make the world a better place. And in the process, we want to offer these services to the people who need it most. And so we want to keep our prices as low as possible so that we can reach those people who need it most. But it makes a situation where we're never in charge of where we're putting our time and energy. We're working for whoever can afford it at those times. And if you're under that threshold, sorry, we can't help you. I think it's so much better to, charge what you need to really provide for yourself so that you can volunteer your time or do projects for cheaper. There's so many big scale projects where millions of dollars are being spent on bad solutions. And like you guys are saying, one little tiny portion of their budget, you can fix all this stuff for. And then you can take the money that you earned off of that and say, I'm volunteering for this community now, or I'm going to do this project for 10% of my normal rates because I can see these people need it and they believe in it. And their cause is something that I too believe in. And now you, as the business owner or the professional, is deciding where your time and energy is spent in terms of your soul work. I think there's, the soul work and the work that we need to do to make money. And there can be overlap, but also difference there, where maybe we do a big project that it's just for a private residence for a wealthy person. It's not going to help the community. It's not going to achieve our personal goals. But in that, you get the funding to build this community center that's a showcase that teaches people. And it's so often people are too narrowed in on that they can only provide one thing for one type of person. And I think it's important to stratify our offerings. And this is something that the Kramatorhof does really well, where they produce the high-end schnapps that's $100 a bottle or 100 euros a bottle, and they produce the cheapest organic potatoes that you can buy for the common people in the community. And this way, they make the money they need to, but they also help feed and support the community. And I think with our offerings, we can do the same kind of thing. And seeing you guys do that has just given me so much hope, because it's put your guys' efforts and energy that much further forward. And now you're impacting more and more landscape. And at the same time, having the time and energy you want to put into the projects you really believe in.
I wanted to add something to that, because I think that given the techniques that we're using or how new the solutions are, what's been super relevant for us is the creation of this like demonstration centers or experimental centers where people can go to see, because I could show everyone Zach's pictures, Seb's pictures, I don't know, Rajendra's pictures, and wow, amazing, but can that work here? No. And we've brought like politicians and like people that have power in their hands to see with their own eyes like what can be done in a place that used to be A and now it's turning to B with this during this time, etc. And I think that is super relevant, and that's something that might not require much money, but can require time, and everyone have to decide how, which is the resource that you have now. Do you have money? Do you have time? Do you have little money, little time? Then go step by step. It will take longer, whatever, however you can make it. But seeing is believing somehow, and we are kind of slaves of our sight sense. Like if we don't see it, it's hard to believe it.
That's such a powerful piece. And that's one of the things that we see is as soon as you have a demonstration project, now it really ripples out through the region where more and more people do it. We have one project in Oregon, and now every year we have tons of projects in Oregon because people can go there. And it's not until they experience it that they realize, oh, this is all possible. This is working here. This landscape is just like mine. This climate is just like mine. This is achievable for me. It's not some image that's far off in space and time. Do you guys see a future where even the conservative farmers start to use these regenerative practices?
I see it. I don't know where, but I see it. I think we always start like trying to find the pain. Nowadays, there's almost no person without pain, without a need, internal need. If you can connect that pain, that need with a solution, you are there with everyone, doesn't mind religion, political side. That's not as simple or as like easy to do, but if you get the feeling of that knowledge, to find the pain and connect it with a feasible solution, you have half of the work done in that way. So yes, I see a future.
And again, I think that the challenge here is how can you find an early adopter that represents the conservative, but it's willing to do some kind of testing or some kind of experiment. And if that person do it and there's a good result out of it, then all of the doors are open. And like that's the hardest part, like how to find that precise person that is willing to trust in this, to take the risk on it. And the demonstration centers can really help for that. So for example, in here, we have different areas, like how to use water retention landscapes and syntropic agriculture for native forest restoration, or I don't know, orchards production, for blah blah blah, and like to create those small spaces. It's been interesting, like what people, because people always say, oh yeah, this is nice, but I do this, and if this that they do cannot be easily related to what they're seeing, then it will keep being something too experimental, too different, too innovative somehow. But yeah, I mean, the most conservative eventually won't be able to drill lower. Eventually, we'll have a fire in their land. Eventually, any of these catastrophes will reach everyone. So the sooner they shift their minds, and this is risk control in conservative language. In corporative language, this is risk management, and the challenge is name it correctly for the one you're talking about.
Absolutely. That was just such a great answer. And that, just to offer an anecdote, that pain point is so important. This year, I recently worked for a totally conventional, huge feedlot dairy, which was not my normal clientele at all. I mean, we're talking 4,000 cows packed into a tiny area, and now they have so little water that they don't even grow a crop. They just import feed for the cows because they need all the water just for the cows and the washing of everything. And they want to do water cycle restoration because in 5 to 10 years, their wells are going to be dry and their farm is going to be no more if they continue business as usual. And so as the pain point, if you can provide a real solution for that, this is something that is widely applicable to everybody. And like you guys are seeing in Chile, it's a model for the world. We have different climates, but the same issues, the same approaches have been applied in the past that have generated the same set of issues. And, you know, it's just a matter of time and severity where the pain gets bad enough that people need to deal with. And so if you can help provide services to help them resolve that pain with real solutions, these efforts can go really fast in directions that you could never imagine. And like you're saying, Thomas, it's all about saying the right words, calling it the right names, and providing things that make sense to the people that you're talking to ultimately.
We learned it from you.
A couple more questions, and then I think we'll give you guys some chance for some final words. Have
Okay.
either you collaborated with the company Patagonia's wilding efforts in southern Chile? And I'd expand that to, do you know much about them, or do you have any thoughts about how they're going about things, if not?
I, I know the efforts that Patagonia has been doing, and they have this fund that they constantly open for different projects. But up to today, we haven't worked with them. But it would be amazing. I mean, there's so little funding for these things, and Patagonia, like everyone that is interested in environment restoration, first thing you go to look for is Patagonia. Patagonia is almost like the private budget for people wanting to do good things in Chile. But yeah, that's another. It would be a really nice thing to collaborate with them.
Awesome. I think this will be the last question, and then I'll give you guys a chance for any closing thoughts. This from Peter Bruce. There's a need for depolarization as people become more entrenched in camps. An example being regenerative ag and vegans. Any thoughts on how to depolarize?
Um,
That's both. That's a good one. Very good one. I think I was talking about social work, about ideology work, or thoughts work, to go and create a pond and a garden and let them talk. Let it talk. There is a nature language that is not spoken in English, in Chinese, or in Spanish, or in any language, human language. It's spoke in deep observation, what we learn in the first modules of the course, no, this attunement. And there's something there that get people start talking about meat, veggies, meat, no veggies, or I don't know, Catholicism, no, Muslims, anything. It's a language of functioning, health, harmony, and like perfection in the functioning of these nature ecosystems. So in places in Chile where political, social are worst, in the poorest areas of this town, this city, the first step is to make a garden. Very quietly, in a school, in a square, and from there, people are starting to appear. And then you start talking nature language. It's for everyone. In an agroforestry system or in a good landscape, you can eat what you want. If you like fruit, if you like seeds, if you like animals, if you like, but it needs to be nature provided in the abundance that it's going to be for everyone. So I think that this nature language, when we talk about a garden, about a nature areas, like wild area, or it's kind of a way to approach this question. Anything else?
I would like to add something also, that remember when we with Francisco we met Ernst Getz together. That's how we met in a workshop that he was performing in Brazil. And one thing I remember that was super impactful for me, it was that he said, sit in the same table an extreme conservationist and a traditional farmer, like a agro business human being. And tell this one, the conservationist, okay, go and provide food for yourself. And said to the other one, okay, go and drink the water that comes out of your fields. Like, what do? We need to find the middle spot. And that was like what like struck many of my things. And it was like, yes, we need to be able to understand the relevance of this conservation, what needs to be preserved and what needs to be restored. But we also need to be able to solve human needs. And just by singing and praying and meditating, and unless you're eating only prana, then you need to eat food and you need to make it somehow. And the ways to produce it, for me at least, it really makes a difference. And also something that it's going to the first question, like this for me, I mean, at least right now in this moment of my life, go towards water values. Like if the one that is creating this conversation just does not want to listen, okay, my friend, it's been a pleasure. Like maybe when you want to really talk, let's talk. If you want to just yell at me and tell me how smarter or more conscious you are or whatever, yeah, there's a mic, go for it. Like not like no, let's not waste our time and energy, because that's really energy depleting when you enter into this death discussion.
Yes, it
Absolutely. And
is.
do you want to answer? Go for it, Francisco.
No. Yes, it is. I said.
Yeah, and I think this is such a foundational, it reminds me, I remember thinking of as a kid that every human has their own version of the truth and they're all different. But nature is this truth that holds us all to the same truth, that holds us all accountable. And I think if you can bring things down to the most simple, basic level and work from that nature connection up, it's really easy for everyone to see. I'll say I have no issues talking about this to total climate change crisis people or total climate deniers. Both of them want water for their kids. Both of them want a healthy landscape to live into. And if we can bring things down to these core goals and not get so spun up in the things that only exist in human language, in these human language realms, never is someone totally right or totally wrong. So the battle just goes on forever. Whereas when you can go to a landscape, you can say, here, look, I don't have to say anything. Just come here and look and you will understand. And so I think that's one of the really great ways to help repair some of this divisive nature that we have, is get people in nature and get them just down to what is the core goals, value of life, their values, and then phrase what you're offering in their language that they understand. That Ernst Gosch quote is great because it's not trying to put people in other worlds. It's saying, okay, within your world, how would you do this? And that questioning is really important, to meet people where they're at. That empathy that you guys shared at the beginning, without that piece, you might just need to keep flowing down the river and not worry, because if you're not going to think about their position and they're not going to think about your position, you're not having a constructive conversation. You're wasting both people's times. And so you're better off leave the conversation, leave the computer, go out into the garden and create something real. And that's, I think, the real solution here. So with that, we're just over 2 hours. I want to give you guys some chances to share any final thoughts. I'm dropping in the chat here a link to their website, a link to their Instagram, a link to the Water Stories community, a
Good.
link to the Water Stories course. So follow up with them, keep track
Well,
of all of their awesome projects. And yeah, do you guys want to share some closing thoughts?
I can start very short. That reminds me your last sentence of a great song of Bob Marley. It's called Real Solution. And it's very wise because so I would like everyone to hear it. I would like to give really lots of thanks to you, Zach. From the beginning, it was like a teacher friend. We have been getting to know each other more. The support for the specific projects that we show was very important. Some of those were in the same process of we were there doing it, talking to you with hands on the head. What to do? And the community behind. So keep the work, keep collaborating. We need to keep together, keep uh, developing all these ideas we have been talking today, and keep it wild, uh, keep it lovely. And that's, I think, for now. We have been talking a lot. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Pancho, for those words. I just wanted to add to that something that for me has been super relevant in the process as well. It's it's having the chance of finding someone that resonates with what I'm looking for and what I'm searching for, and creating a team with. Like, do these things alone, and that's something that happens a lot in the regenerative world or the ecosystem. There's a lot of lonely wolves doing their thing at their own, at their place. And sometimes it might be easier because no one's going to do the things as I want them to be done. But to find partners, to find teams, and to create that community, that is something that has been, that we've been deprived somehow as a society. I think that is like the most somehow revolutionary act that we can do. And if by doing that we are helping to restore our landscape, go for it. And thanks, Zach, for building this community, and for at least, I mean, my own experience. For me, it's super hard to post in the community because I don't have it in my top list, you know. But I say, oh, we should definitely post this, and but it's a muscle I need to train somehow. Because and every year we say, let's make more mingas this year, like, because it's in the gathering, it's in the sharing, the process, where slowly we all start shifting our mindsets or our the way we see life. So yeah, thanks for this lovely community. Keep it loving, keep it lovely, and let's go for it.
Thank you both so much. You guys are such exemplar members of this community, having been with us from the beginning, bringing so many people in, sharing the work. It's really, it is what it is because of people like you. So I want to thank both of you from the bottom of my heart for everything you're doing for the planet and for people. This has been an awesome talk. Appreciate you sharing so much, and look forward to seeing all the beautiful things and connections you guys create. Have a great day, everybody.
Peace, everybody.
Thank you. Peace out.